All right, Kelly. Well, I appreciate you joining me this morning. Sorry I was running a little late. You're nice enough to share a little bit about your experience with alcoholism, how you were able to find recovery, and ultimately how you're able to support other people and show up today. And yeah, I want to give you the floor and yeah.
All right. Well, my name is Kelly, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since December 6th of 2022.
You just celebrated 18 months.
Just celebrated 18 months on the 6th.
Congratulations.
So I guess I'll just start at the beginning. My story started very happily. I have a twin brother and an older brother, two loving parents, upper middle class family in St. Paul, Minnesota. My childhood wouldn't point to anything that would explain my alcoholism. There wasn't alcoholism on either side of my family. I'm an alcoholic because I have an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body. When I start drinking, I can't stop, and when I stop, I can't stay stopped. So, like I said, childhood was very pleasant. I, you know, I enjoyed my childhood. I got to junior high, and very quickly, it seemed like all of my friends that I knew from elementary school were making all sorts of new friends, and were talking to the pretty girls, and I felt like I missed something. I was like, well, what happened? Like, I was very shy, and so I felt very alone. I was like, boy, I missed the boat. I'm going to be unpopular for the rest of my life. Like, dang it. And so at this time, AIM was a very important thing in a 13, 14-year-old's life. So I had one of those, and I started talking to these girls that I wanted to talk to in person on there. And
It took me a second. AIM. Okay.
yeah, AIM.
All right.
AIM.
Yep. We had MSN at our school.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So I started talking to these girls that I wanted to talk to in person on there that I couldn't talk to in person because I was too shy. Behind a keyboard, it made it easier. And so I, started talking to these girls, and I immediately started lying. My alcoholism came out right away. I told them that I drank alcohol and I smoked weed. And they seemed to respond very well to that. They thought that was cool. And so, but I wasn't doing these things. I wanted to, but I wasn't. And so, these girls, they thought I was cool because I did those things, and I was like, dang it, okay, I had better start doing these things, or they're going to find out that I'm full of crap. And so I did. I started drinking very rarely, but some. I mean, for a 13-year-old, some is still quite a bit.
Right.
Right. Smoking a little bit of weed, and then I felt like, now I'm not lying. And, so 7th grade, I started talking to people a little bit. 8th grade, I felt like I really arrived. I got a girlfriend. I became very popular. I started drinking and smoking a little bit. And I realized, okay, this party culture, this persona that is alcohol and pot, people like that, and that makes me popular. And so, yes, okay, that's my ticket. I got to high school, and it just kind of it ramped up more. I started smoking pot very quickly every day. I drank, every couple weeks or something, and that high school worked really well for me. This party person that I become, people seem to like that, and so I became very popular very quickly. I I won class clown, biggest party animal, and biggest flirt for like 4 years running.
Just because I find it kind of interesting. How did your twin brother? I mean, how did he compare to you at this time?
So my twin brother, also incredibly popular. We went to St. Paul Central High School, which is a public school in St. Paul. My twin brother Brady became very popular with people at private schools, at Catholic schools. You know, just different ones. So he went to Central, but he hung out primarily with people from private schools.
So you had a different friend group.
Very much
Okay,
so.
got it,
Very
got
much
it.
so. And we were very competitive.
Sure.
Me and my twin brother, today I love him to death. When we were growing up, we were kind of combative. People would ask me like, why don't you ever hang out with Brady? And I'd tell them I hate that guy.
Yeah.
It was that ultra competitive thing. It felt like I needed to be better than him
Yeah.
in all sorts of things. And really, we ended up living very, very different lives, which is, I think, one of the reasons that we're so close today.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But so, anyway, very popular, and I attribute this to my partying. At the time, I did not see my drug use or alcohol use as problematic at all. It was still very much, it was like, this works really well.
No.
And so, went through high school, all things are good, very, very happy with that experience. I ended up going to the University of Minnesota Duluth for college, and I got up there, and it very, very quickly I felt like I was in 7th grade again. I felt like, I didn't know any of these people. How are these people making friends? Like, what's happening? And I was just like, dang it, I missed the boat again. Like, these people don't know that I'm a big deal. I was a big deal in high school. Don't
Right.
you guys know that?
Right.
And they didn't. So I started drinking. There were some people I knew from high school up there with me, and so I started drinking with those people every day. And that was going fine. I was like, I can do this. This is good. And then, like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks in, they were all like, hey, we got school stuff to do. And I was like, that sucks. So I was like, well, I still want to party. I'm lonely. And so that was the first time that I drank alone. I remember it very, very well. I was in my dorm room. I was watching 1,000 Ways to Die. I was smoking pot, and I was drinking whiskey. And I was like, this is fantastic. I may like this better than drinking with other people. Like, this is wonderful. I love it. And in no time, I was doing that every single day. Every night, I was getting drunk alone. If I didn't have anybody to drink with, I was drinking alone. And, I wasn't one of those people that, resisted this idea that I had a problem with alcohol. When I started drinking every day, it was like, I know that I can't stop. Because I would wake up in the mornings like, hey, this is problematic. I should probably not drink every day, And I couldn't. Nighttime would come, and I would be like, yeah, not tonight. I'm for sure going to drink tonight. We'll do that tomorrow. And that went on for months, and I was like, dang it. Like, this is what alcoholism is.
Right.
Like, wow. Who knew? Not me, an alcoholic, but I couldn't deny it because I couldn't stop. And so I left Duluth because I thought a geographical change would help with that. And so I went back home to St. Paul and enrolled at MCTC, and I was like, okay, I'm back with a lot of my old friends because not many of them went away for college. I'll be back with my old friends. Now I'm going to be popular again, put this drinking thing behind me. And that did not happen. If anything, it progressed. Drinking alone as often as I was up there. I was starting earlier in the day. And so I was like, oh, geographic didn't work. How about that? At this time, I was also experimenting with a lot of other drugs. Something that a lot of my friends liked was Adderall, and it was easy to get. So we would do Adderall. For me, stimulants have always affected me quite a bit, and so we would be drinking. My friends would take Adderall. I would take Adderall. They would pass out, and I'd be wired. And so, I was like, yeah, there's no way that I'm going to bed.
Right.
I'm up. And, this happened for a while. I was on a bender where I was up for 3 days straight. And, we were partying. My friends passed out. And I was like, well, here we are again. And I got the bright idea that instead of sitting in this basement alone with nothing to do, that it would be a very good idea for me to drive around and expose myself to women. And so I did that, and it went so well the first time, I decided to do it several times more. And not long after that, I came upon somebody that recognized me that I did not recognize. I exposed myself to a woman who turned out to be my girlfriend at the time's cousin.
Oh.
And so she knew who I was. She called the cops, and I was arrested for indecent exposure. And about 6 months later, I wasn't charged at the time. About 6 months later, I was charged, and I got a call from the Pioneer Press, a large newspaper in the Twin Cities, and they wanted a statement. They were doing an article about me and my indecent exposure. And I woke up that next morning, and there was a rather large article about me and what I had done. And by noon that day, everybody that I knew had read that article. And, considering I was very popular in high school, I knew a lot of people. My immediate best friend group very quickly was like, hey, guy, it's not looking good for us to hang out with you right now. We're going to take a step back, let things cool down. A lot of my acquaintances were like, yeah, no, we don't like you, dude. And I was very, very alone. I was, cyberbullying. That was part of it. At the time, I felt like a victim. Today, I recognize that I'm not. I'm not a victim. I victimized other people. But also the fallout from that, was trauma.
Sure.
The fallout affected me greatly. And so before I was kind of just dipping my toes into this alcoholism thing, and when I didn't have a reason to drink. Now I had one.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I was going to drink at that thing as hard as I could, and I did. My alcoholism progressed from, early evenings and nights to the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. And that would be the way that I drank for the rest of my life until 18 months ago. And so, I did that. Things got hairy. I started going to treatments. I would go to treatment. I would think that I would get better, and I wouldn't. And it just got into this cycle where I would go to treatment, sober house, kicked out, treatment, sober house, kicked out, treatment, kicked out, sober house.
Right,
You know,
right.
I was continually in these programs that I would drink at and get kicked out of, and then I was homeless, so I'd have to go back into a program. Eventually, I got into a program called River Place in Anoka, and you know, they had a extended care program where for a month you could live in one of their apartments rent free.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
And then I could work, I could get a little bit of money so that I could get my own place afterwards.
Yeah.
And I did that. I moved in with another guy that I knew from there. We got our place, and then I felt like, okay, I'm finally out of this cycle. I'm finally out of the treatment cycle. Nobody can kick me out of my own apartment for drinking. And so, and at this time, I was like, my drinking is not the problem. All of you guys are making it a problem. Getting caught is the problem. So I just drank. And for about 7 years after that, I drank continuously for those 7 years. For most of those 7 years, it worked very, very well. I got to drink exactly the way that I wanted to. It was working. I was, you know, relatively happy. But you know, I was drinking from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to bed. That's how I like to drink. And that was all going great until one night I was at my buddy's house on a Friday night. That was kind of my, you know, that was my schedule. Friday nights I would go to this guy's house. We would drink together. It would be a good time. I'm still social, you know, it's not a problem. And I was playing with his dog, and I had on a, you know, old pair of shoes. Playing with his dog, he made a cut. I tried to make the same cut. My shoe broke, and I fell and I slammed my head into his garage door. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I was like, oh, you know, I'm drunk, my shoe broke. You know, I got a bump on my head, no big deal. You know, I'll, you know, maybe call it a night. I'll sleep it off. So that was a Friday night. I drank Saturday, Sunday, of course, because I couldn't stop. And so I woke up Monday morning and started going to work. On my way there, I got lost. That was very eye-opening because I'd been working there for years. It's not a difficult place to get to. I knew how to get to work. It's not hard. And I ended up in a place that was not close. I didn't know where I was. I had to get Google Maps out to like get me out of wherever I was. I was like, something's wrong. How did I end up here? I don't even know how I got here. And I ended up going to United Hospital, and I was like, hey, you know, something's going on with me. You know, I hit my head. I don't know.
Yeah.
And they did a CT scan, and they told me, yeah, your brain is bleeding. You have a subdural hematoma. And they were like, we have to hold you. Like, this is a big deal. Yeah. And I was like, in my head, it still wasn't a big deal. I was like, you know what? It's just a fluky thing. I've hit my head before. You know, this happened Friday night. It's Monday now. Like, is it going to get worse? Like, I doubt it. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what could happen. But at the time, my priority was alcohol. Right. And I couldn't drink while I was there. So I was like, listen, I have drinking to do. They were like, okay, we got to do one more scan just to see what, if anything, else has happened.
Right.
And they released me because they were like, we can't keep you, but you're making a bad decision.
Yeah.
And so I was like, whatever, you know, don't do that again or something. And, you know, after that, the main thing that happened after my subdural hematoma, which by definition is a traumatic brain injury, is that my relationship with alcohol changed dramatically. One of my points of pride was always that I could drink and nobody would know. I worked drunk all the time. That was how I worked. Never was an issue. Never stumbled, never slurred my words, never, didn't make stupid mistakes. I mean, and I would go over to that buddy's house. He would get, sloppy. I would take care of him.
You would keep it together.
Yeah, that was a point of pride for me. I can drink and maintain my composure. After I hit my head, that was no longer the case. I would black out much more quickly. I would stumble. Not like I was falling all over the place, but I would stumble, and people would see that, and they'd be like, "What's going on?" I would slur my words. Just that composure factor was no longer there. And so, my boss approached me and was like, "Hey, we know you've been drinking, and but now you're showing it, and you have to stop. So come back Monday sober." And I was like, "Okay, we'll see how that works."
Right.
So I tried to wean down over that weekend. I couldn't, not to the extent that I needed to. So I got there Monday. I drank before work what I thought would be enough. And by noon, I knew that I was in deep trouble. I knew that I was going into severe withdrawal. It wasn't looking good. I was just like, I just got to make it to 2 o'clock. Then I can drink as much as I need to. I didn't make it to 2 o'clock. I had a seizure at work, and...
Because you had seizures before?
That's the first one that I know about, because I'd never tried to stop drinking during this large block of drinking when my drinking was at a...
How long did that period of time last where you were drinking like that?
7 years.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I started, during that 7 years, I started out with beer because beer's safe. I can only drink so much beer. And that same manager that told me I needed to stop drinking altogether was the one who recommended, hey, somebody smelled you at work, drink vodka, it smells less than beer. And I was like, oh,
good advice.
And so I started drinking vodka, and vodka, I could drink more of that. I didn't get as full as fast. And so I was drinking a 1.75 at least every day for 2 years. And so, going from, a 1.75 or 2 liters every day down to, not that was not easy.
Right.
And so, I had a seizure, probably 1 o'clock that day. And
so this is your first real attempt to curb your drinking.
Yeah.
And then you have a seizure.
Yep. Have a seizure, and the thing about seizing is that when you fall, you don't catch yourself. So I hit my head again. I hit my head, on basically where my eyebrow is, and then I hit my head again when I bounced it off a table, and then the back of my head hit. And I woke up on a gurney, and they were like, "Hey, yeah, you had a seizure. We're going to the hospital." And it's all kind of a blur, but they were like, "Yeah, we see your old bleed. We see the old subdural hematoma. You have a new subdural hematoma where you hit your head here, and you have one in the back of your head." And I was like, okay. So that was, traumatic brain injury number 2. I I tried treatment after that at a recommendation from my work. Got sober for treatment. The day I got out, I drank. And very quickly after that, I was fired because I started showing up to work, just in no shape to work. And so at this point, I don't have a job. My alcoholism is, at a peak, and I got these traumatic brain injuries that are also changing my relationship with alcohol. What I'm noticing at this time is that the allergy that when I have a drink, I can't stop. That is becoming much more extreme. I am, where I used to pace myself a little bit. Now I can't pace myself. That 1.75 that used to last me all day is lasting me 2-3 hours.
Wow.
And then I'm getting violently drunk. I mean, I'm falling all over the place. I'm waking up with bruised ribs, with cuts, with bumps all over me. My liver's not doing well, so anytime I hit anything even a little bit, I'm covered in bruises. But at this time, I somehow secured a job at the post office, USPS, and so I managed that somehow with a lot of help from a lot of people because I was in no shape to do anything very early in the day. So I got hired, and they were like, yeah, you got orientation this day, and I'm like, okay. I get ready for my orientation. I drink enough to where I think I'll be able to make it to noon for lunch, and I can drink again there. I still had a bottle with me in case I needed to pop out for a bathroom break or whatever. I got in that car. I walked down the stairs, no railings. I was like, yeah, I'm good. Not falling today, no problem, I'm good. On my way to the interview, I fell asleep at the wheel, I believe, and I got into a very serious car accident. I was on 94, and they told me that I hit the median head on going 60 miles per hour.
Wow.
And so I was, I should have died. That should have killed me.
Right.
It didn't. All things considered, my injuries were minor. Some broken bones. I bit my tongue really bad. But I was alive. My legs were okay. I did collect another subdural hematoma. So we're on number 3. I was in the hospital for a while. I got out, and now I have a lot of painkillers. And what goes with painkillers? Alcohol.
Yeah. Vodka.
Yes, of course. And so I had that combination, and it turns out that I abuse painkillers the same way I do alcohol. I took almost all of them within, a day or two.
Yeah.
In that time, I went out to my parking lot for a cigarette. I fell. I hit my head. My landlord called my parents, was like, hey, there's so much blood in this parking lot, like, you gotta check on Kelly. And they did. They called an ambulance because they couldn't move me. They were like, you would have taken us all down the stairs. They picked me up, brought me to Regions Hospital. Another head injury, another subdural hematoma. They're like, we see the other 3. This is number 4. And, I go back to treatment. At this time, I'm held in the cardiology unit at Regions because when I got there, they were like, your heart wasn't wasn't doing the things that your heart's supposed to do. So, now I'm battered and bruised. I got broken bones. I got, stitches. I got, my head's not doing well. Alcoholism is out of control. I get out of treatment, immediately start drinking. In this time, I go to another treatment called Vinland, that is a place that specializes in traumatic brain injuries as well as alcoholism. So I go there. I'm not able to stay there as long as, I would have liked to, 30 days. And so my counselor was like, leave, change your insurance, and then come back. And so, all right, so, at Vinland, they tell me, you're going to leave, you're going to change your insurance, and then you're going to come back for our extended program. And so I do that. I, of course, drink in the in-between time. And this is when all of these brain injuries, my alcoholism, really, it's a bad situation. So I'm drinking as much as when I was at my peak. I can't, this thing where I couldn't maintain my composure is in full swing. I am falling more often than not. At the end, my apartment, my furniture was, smashed just by my body from falling over. I, regularly, just covered in bruises, covered in scrapes, covered in all sorts of things. Now when I drink, I fall, which is something that had never, ever been part of my story. I cannot drink safely anymore. And, most importantly, alcohol wasn't working for me the way that it always had. And I finally realized that. I had that month where, I drank in between my stays at Vinland, and it really, really kicked my ass. I finally got back to detox, and, I finally reached that place of surrender.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I realized, alcohol just doesn't work for me the way that it used to. And I used to see my brain injuries. By the way, I collected another one in this in-between time.
We're at what now?
5.
5, okay.
5 diagnosed subdural hematomas. And so
Is that a record or?
It's an accomplishment, I would say, not a good one.
Because you were at Vinland, which specializes in treatment for people with TBIs.
Yeah.
So was everyone there? Did everyone have a TBI that was there?
It's not a requirement to be there. They specialize in traumatic brain injuries. They specialize in mental health. Okay. Vinland, I've been to a lot of places that are dual diagnosis.
Yep.
And a lot of those places, they'll show a video on mental health or something, and that makes them dual diagnosis.
Sure.
Vinland actually did it. They have therapists on staff where you meet with a therapist at least once a week. They have neuropsych evaluations. They have psychologists. They are a true dual diagnosis treatment center.
Yeah.
And I will say that, I don't think that my number of traumatic brain injuries is a record. It is a miracle that I am as high functioning as I am.
Yeah.
considering my history.
Right.
You know, there were people that were there that hit their head one time and it changed their life dramatically.
Right.
Mine hasn't necessarily done that. It changed my relationship with alcohol
Right.
dramatically.
Right.
And it ultimately made recovery possible for me. My brain injuries are an absolute blessing because had I not had them, my relationship with alcohol would have stayed the same. I would have been a functioning alcoholic, and I likely would have just drank myself to death. You know, I would have had liver failure. My pancreas was already not doing well at all. I was having pancreatitis attacks. The way I was drinking was killing me. I just couldn't see that, or at least I didn't want to acknowledge it. You know, it was working too well. It
Right.
did for me exactly what I needed it to do. My brain injuries made that no longer the case.
Yeah.
I wasn't having fun anymore.
Right.
And so I got back to Vinland, and I was finally at this surrender place. And, you know, I remember being in my counselor's office, same counselor I had worked with the first time I was there. And, you know, this was my first spiritual experience. I was sitting with her, and I was like, you know, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. I am terrified of ever drinking again. I'm also terrified to never drink again.
Right.
Like, you know, that this problem of like both options, absolutely, I don't want to do either of them.
Right.
But I have to do one. And, you know, that was when I remembered something that one of my sponsors had told me, that I had lost the power over choice in drink. Left to my own devices, I will drink again.
Right.
I don't get to choose anymore. And so the only way I could ever regain power of choice was through a higher power. That's the only way I could avoid that first drink. And so I was sitting in that office, and I was like, okay, you know, I've been, you know, a wannabe atheist, but mostly an agnostic my entire adult life. I got to start praying. I got to start seeking something. Otherwise, I will drink. And that started my spiritual journey. That you know, that terrifying two alternatives I was facing. I was like, okay, God, I guess we'll see. And that is really when my life changed. I started praying to something that I didn't understand, that I didn't know. Just I memorized the third step prayer, so that was where I started. Did the third step prayer multiple times a day. That's where my prayer life began. I was in there for about 3.5 months. And so usually about 30 days in, I was like, okay, I feel better. I'm physically feeling good. I have friends. Like, I'm ready for more pain. Like, I was like, but I could drink again,
Right.
you know?
Right.
This time I didn't feel that way. I was like, like this, I want to stay in treatment. I'm enjoying myself. You know, I'm feel like I'm making progress. I don't want to drink. And that's like, I think when I first noticed that maybe that obsession was starting to go away a little bit. And so, you know, I was coming to the end of my stay there, and my counselor was like, hey, so, you know, there's this place, Kinnick Falls, in River Falls, Wisconsin, like I think you should go there. And I was like, no, you know, I don't know about that. I've been in treatment for 3.5 months. Like,
Yeah.
I got stuff to do, bills to pay. And my parents, fortunately, she was like, your parents are going to be involved in your treatment planning this time around. we sat down with my parents, and they were like, yeah, we think you should go to River Falls too. And I was like, okay, all right. We'll do that. I got to Kinnick, and I was the transition was jarring. I was like, there's not enough programming. Like, how am I supposed to stay sober like this? We meet 2 times a day for an hour. Like, they don't get it. I'm a real alcoholic. And a guy told me, he was like, if you think that the programming here is going to keep you sober, you're dead wrong. Like, you need to get into AA. That's what people do here. And I was like, oh, that's right. Like, oh, I need to go to AA meetings.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I got introduced to a recovery community that is different than anyone I had ever experienced before. People in River Falls, the fellowship, I mean, people wrapped me up. They made me feel a part of very, very quickly. And to my credit, I allowed that to happen.
Sure.
I accepted these people. I accepted their help. I accepted their friendship. And so I started getting involved in AA. I got a sponsor out here. I got involved in Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christ-centered 12-step program. I just allowed this community to do what it does, and I got to the end of my stay at Kinnick, and I was like, I don't want to leave. Like, I do not want to go back to St. Paul. I found something I've been desperately looking for my entire life here.
And you had an apartment still in St. Paul. I remember for quite a while you were still holding on to that apartment.
Yeah, I had an apartment in St. Paul, a 2-bedroom that the last of the money that I had saved while I was working, I was paying rent on that thing for a year when I wasn't living there. It was the most expensive storage unit that's ever existed. But that was something I was like, I love that apartment. I want this thing.
Right.
But I still was like, I don't want to go back to St. Paul, though. Well, it wasn't that I didn't want to go back to St. Paul. It's that I didn't want to leave River Falls.
Right.
And so I got into a sober house out here, which, was another God thing. There's not a ton of sober living in River Falls.
Right. And
a bed opened up. There was one guy ahead of me. He was going to get that bed. Circumstances happened where that didn't work out for him, and I got it. And I was just like, oh, okay.
It's a sign.
Yeah, I was like, all right, well, thank you, God.
Right.
I don't need to leave.
Yep.
And, after that, I was like, well, I get to stay here. I get to.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make the most of it. I dove even more headfirst into recovery. I took on a lot of commitments. I started sponsoring guys. I got into leadership at Celebrate Recovery. I started to do the things that I saw other people that I admired in this community doing.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, I guess, for me was actively working the steps, practicing the principles in all of my affairs. I have done a lot of work on steps 6 and 7. Those were steps that are often called flyover steps. They are the 2 that I work the most often in my program. Working on myself. What is blocking me off from my higher power? Asking him to remove those things and becoming willing to have him do so. Today I live a life that I didn't think would be possible. A lot of people in the community say that, if you had asked them what they hoped their life would look like 18 months down the road, they would have sold themselves short. For me, that is very, very much the case.
Yeah.
I would have been like, I hope I have a job. I hope I have my own place. I hope I have a girlfriend. Just material stuff, really.
Make it really small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And today, I have peace of mind.
Yeah.
I am happy and joyful. I am very content with me. I hated myself for a really long time, and I didn't know that not everybody felt that way. I thought that was normal. I was like, well, yeah, people on the outside say like, oh yeah, I like me and stuff, but I'm like, on the inside, you hate yourself.
Right.
That was eye-opening when people were like, no, that's not how most people feel. Today I feel that. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you didn't do the right thing there, but it's not that I'm bad, it's that I did a wrong thing, I am a good person. I like me, and it seems like this recovered version of Kelly, other people like too.
Yeah.
I get to show up in ways for the people that I love, for the people that I care about, for the people that I don't particularly care for. I get to show up well.
Right.
I just get to show up in a way that I had never even been interested in before, and today it's so valuable to me. It's of such value. It's an absolute blessing what this community, what my higher power, what the 12-step programs I'm involved in have done for me. I'm so grateful for what all that looks like. And really, I don't know that any of it would have been possible. It at least wouldn't have happened as quickly without hitting my head, That was a God thing. I see that today. It's like, hey, Kelly, you're going to drink yourself to death unless I intervene. And I'm not going to change your entire life. I'm not going to make it that painful, but I am going to change your relationship with alcohol. And that's exactly what he did. I was able to recognize that in a moment of clarity and begin this journey. Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty incredible story. I mean, you're to have gone through all of that and to, and then you add the complexities of having a TBI on top of all of that. It's pretty amazing, and you are. I mean, I see you in the community. You show up and you're helping other guys, and you're manager at a new sober house in town here, which is really cool. I just appreciate how vulnerable you've been in sharing your experience. I would ask you, what would you say to someone who might be still struggling or in that place that you were 18 months ago?
I mean, I think the most important thing is to never stop trying. Part of my story is that I've gone to 25-ish treatments. I lost count. A lot of people are like, what will one more treatment do? What will, I've tried and I tried and I tried, and it just doesn't work for me. Recovery isn't for me. I'm a guy that did around 25 treatments, the 25th, 26th, whatever, is the one that's stuck. You know, if I stop trying to let others, to let God, to let, you know, the 12 steps work in my life, that's when they won't be able to. If I continue to seek, I will eventually find. If I'm not seeking, I won't find anything. I'll just find exactly what I've always had, you know, alcohol. You know, and when somebody does give it another attempt, you know, dive in head first. You know, fake it till you make it. When I started praying, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a relationship with God. I just took advice of somebody that I trusted. I was like, what I'm doing isn't working. So I started to pray, and I started to seek. And, you know, it's said that if we crack that door just a little bit, He will be there to answer. I didn't need to meet my higher power halfway. I couldn't. I cracked that door just a little bit, and He met me right where I was at. That's the blessing of God. You know,
Right.
he if we all had to meet Him halfway, none of us would find Him.
Right.
We just have to find that little bit of willingness. You know, get a sponsor, work the steps. You know, yeah, that's my advice.
Well, I appreciate it. As you were talking, you know, it's fall down 25 times, get up 26,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Might be the name of this episode. I don't know.
Do you want just like I touched on how my traumatic TBIs, you know, affected my relationship with alcohol. Do you just want to know some of the other symptoms?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe kind of touch on how your TBI has impacted you in other ways separate from the alcoholism.
So, like I said, I'm very blessed in that when you meet me, you wouldn't know
Yeah.
my history with head injuries. But I, as I walk it out, am more aware of different ways in which it's affected me. You know, emotional regulation is something that many people with head injuries struggle with. I absolutely did, and still do at times. I'm quick to anger is something that I used to struggle with more. I've learned to cope with it. You know, something that I've noticed, unexpected loud noises, I believe, scare me. And then I immediately get very, very angry.
Sure.
And something that I've had to kind of coach myself is that when those things happen, I'm like, listen, Kelly, you're not actually angry. Like, this is just, you're scared, and your automatic reaction is to get very, very angry.
Sure.
Like, you aren't. Take a deep breath, pray if you need to, but don't lash out. Another thing that I've kind of had to relearn is, you know, math. Math is something that I've always, prior to my head injuries, math came very, very easy to me. You know, just in my head, I could do a lot of math without any issue, really without a second thought. I've had to kind of relearn how to do math in my head. You know, like, it was very, very frustrating to me at first. I felt stupid. I was like, this used to be so easy for me. Why can I not do it anymore? And you know, frustration doesn't help anything. You know, I had to be patient with myself, and I just learned new ways to do that. I break it down into smaller things. And, I guess in Czech, sometimes I use a calculator,
Yeah.
that's okay. Aphasia, inability to recall words that I know. That is another thing that I've experienced. It again can be very frustrating. I can feel like, I'm less than I was. I'm less smart. I'm less intelligent. I value being articulate so much, and when I can't recall a word, I get frustrated. And another thing, I'm just like, that's not helpful. I'm very fortunate I have Google.
Right.
Describe the word that I'm looking for, and then it'll bring it up, and I'll be like, okay, that is the word. And something I've noticed, those words that I couldn't recall, but when I look them up and I find them, the satisfaction is so I'm so satisfied.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, that's the word. I do not forget it after that.
Okay. So it's almost like you got to relearn things.
Yeah, I gotta relearn words, relearn math. I'm still off balance. I'm not as balanced as I used to be. So which can also be scary. At work I had to be on some metal stairs for a while, and that was scary for me because I was like, I really, really don't want to fall down. Trust in God is something that I lean into in those fearful situations, and also knowing my limits. Just like, use the railing, use this, use that. Like, be careful, slow down. Just and not being too hard on myself. I mean, that's the main thing. When I encounter obstacles that I attribute to my head injuries, being patient with myself and being like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's very okay that I can't remember, or I can't do things the exact same way that I used to.
Right.
The on the flip side, I also don't need to drink.
Right.
Like, what? Oh, you couldn't recall a word. You couldn't do this math in your head. You got a little frustrated. Well, guess what? The on the flip side, you're recovered. I
Right.
am recovered today.
Right.
I would trade that in a heartbeat, over and over and over again.
I mean, you're a miracle, man. I just, I don't know. I mean, I can relate to so much of your story and just being in that place, I feeling hopeless, right? And then, there's like things that happened that I can look back on and I can see that was God working in my life, I mean, it sucked in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't want to believe that that's what it was, right? But hindsight's always 20/20, and we can look back on those situations, and that's really what shaped us. And you just have a really powerful story, and and the best part is that you're out there helping other people, and I just know that people are going to watch this and they're going to be able to relate. I didn't realize it until I spoke with you, and then I kind of looked into this treatment facility, Vinland, and this is actually a big thing. Like, there's a lot of people out there that not only are afflicted with alcoholism, but have these, this TBI complexity. So I just find it really fascinating, and you come in and sharing your insight. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you
Looking
for
forward
having
to
me.
this. Yeah.